And before we get started today, I do want to mention that if, with COVID coming back, with COVID coming back right now, and we're seeing a lot of people, we're seeing a lot of governments locally that are going around and they're reminding people to shut themselves in, to lock themselves into their homes, to become essentially prisoners in their own home. Well, we want to remind you, as we have on our front page here, that please, if you're not feeling well, if you feel like you may harm yourself, please reach out to the suicide hotline at 800-273-8255. If you're a victim of domestic abuse, please reach out to 800-799-7233. These numbers are important. We've seen an astronomical increase, an exponential increase in suicides, in domestic abuse, drug abuse. Please, over the summer, since actually March, if you aren't feeling well, if you're not feeling safe, reach out. There are people out there, organizations are there, and even if we do run into another COVID lockdown, please, they're there to help you. They will still be there to help you. So that's very important, and I want to make sure people are aware of that. But let's get started with the show. My name is Michael Voss. I am the Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I am happy to be your host here at No Soundbites Allowed. We do long-form political commentary, and I'm going to be with you today. We're going to be doing about an hour in the show. Excuse me, here or there. We're going to be doing about an hour in the show, and then I'm going to be going out to speak with or to cover Spike Cohen, who is the vice presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party. I'll be coming from his event live, and hopefully after that event, we may be having an exclusive meeting with him. We may be having an exclusive interview with Spike Cohen, the vice presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party. So we are looking forward to being able to provide that to you, and we'll give you more details on that once we're sure. Okay? So we're going to get into the show in just a second here and let you know what's really going on. Looks like Facebook is online. Ooh, that's always a big plus. They almost never, we're constantly getting shut down by that. So folks, today's show, we're going to be talking about a lot of different things, a lot of issues. Obviously, President Trump has COVID. How is that going to affect the election, which is a big deal? And what's going on with the election? I mean, we just had the first presidential debate talking about Biden, talking about President Trump, who did well, who didn't do well. Let's get into that a little bit. What have been the repercussions of that? How has that changed the outlook for the average person in America? You know, there's a lot of people who have a lot of questions about that. In fact, let's talk about how secure are the votes. You know, we're talking about ballots. There's still a lot of talk about the generic ballots going out. There are questions, a lot of questions that have come up in this week talking about what's going on with the absentee ballots. There is a breaking scandal that came out on Monday talking about ballots that are being paid for. They are being bought and paid for and misrepresenting the absentee ballots. And how is that affecting our government? We want to get into a little bit of that. I want to get into a little bit about, well, even other breaking news that you probably haven't heard about throughout this week from any of the news media because of a news media blackout and the repercussions of some of the decisions as we see the government going back into local governments, state governments, going back into this shutdown mentality for COVID-19 because guess what? We're back in the very normal flu season. It's already starting. People are getting the flu and they're getting COVID-19. Just as had been predicted, just as it was expected from back in February of this year. And so the number of cases are going up, although we're not seeing a large increase in the number of deaths. So should we be afraid? Should we be concerned? As always, this is a conversation, not just me talking to you live. This is a conversation with you live. And I always look forward to hearing your comments. You can reach us at 607-242-1582, Also, you can reach us on Facebook and on Twitter in our chat stream, which is up. So if you text us in Facebook, on YouTube, we'll be able to see your comments and we'll be able to answer you directly. We value your comments and your input. This is what the show is about. So let me get into, before we start off with President Trump, the 2020 election, let's talk about something that's very important. Do you remember that it was just about, 10 days ago, September 20th, when Nancy Pelosi said that she was looking at the potential to, impeach President Trump if he nominated a SCOTUS Supreme Court Justice nominee, which is Amy Barrett, as we had predicted. Now, something about that's been bugging me throughout the entire time that she had said this. And she said it very clearly, okay? Something she said very clearly. To quote, "So right now our main goal, and I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg would want that to be, sorry, tongue-tied for a second, would be to protect the integrity of the election as we protect the American people from the coronavirus." Okay, stop right there. No, that's not true. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg would stand by the Constitution. And if you're wondering what the Constitution actually says, because a lot of people always wonder about this, and links to everything we're going to be describing will be in the description in the YouTube, on YouTube when we're done with the show. But what she said in the Constitution, according to Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2, which most people have not heard or read, and I'm going to say hello to people in just a moment, but so people understand what's really going on in our government. When Nancy Pelosi says she wants to impeach the president for nominating a Supreme Court justice, I want you to be very clear what the Democrats are talking about here. Clause 2 says, he shall have the power. Actually, the reference point that's important. He shall nominate, and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, shall appoint ambassadors, public ministers, and consuls, justices of the Supreme Court. Full stop. Okay, I'm going to just stop right there. He, the president, shall nominate, and by and with the advice and consent of the Senate, shall appoint judges and judges of the Supreme Court. How in the world Nancy Pelosi can take that direct statement from the Constitution and say that, well, we have to impeach the president? I don't understand it. Because she does go in there and she says, further in this article from NBC News, this isn't somewhere from the far left, she says, yeah, we have a responsibility. We've taken an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. If that is true, the Constitution of the United States says the president shall nominate judges of the Supreme Court. How do you impeach someone for doing what the Constitution says? How can you turn around and tell people that the Constitution, that you're upholding the Constitution by trying to violate the Constitution? It makes no sense whatsoever. Democrats who have said this obviously have never read the Constitution, and really, they need to understand this. And Americans should, because most people may not have read Article 2, Section 2, Clause 2. But that's why I wanted to show it to you, so you know for yourself, this is what the Constitution is talking about. And that nominating Amy Barrett for the Supreme Court justice position, vacated by the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, is absolutely natural. Now, I know we have a couple of comments here, and I do want to address Gene. Hello, it was great meeting you. Gene dropped by. Many people may or may not realize that I'm a candidate as well in a local race, and she had dropped by, and I want to say hello and thank you. Roxanne Deborah is with us. Hi there. And I see, and Gene says, because Crazy Nancy has too much hate, she's evil. I don't like to call anyone evil. I think she's misguided. I think she's confused. I think she's taking advantage of the ignorance of the American public that may not be familiar with the Constitution. I think she's playing people's emotions to try and get a political advantage, which we see with BLM, which we see with Antifa, we see with a lot of the progressives. They're constantly using emotion to get people to do things that if they logically thought it through, if they actually knew the information, they wouldn't do it. And it's very common. I'll give you a great example of that. Remember, there was massive news media attention, that's been out there right now on the question about, well, President Trump did not denounce, quote unquote, did not denounce white supremacy, which is insane because if you actually look at the transcript, he did. But more importantly, they said he's never done this. He's never denounced it. And that was a big point of Joe Biden. You've never denounced it. Chris Wallace mistakenly tried to misquote President Trump and say, well, you supported the white supremacists down in Charlottesville. And since that time, including the Proud Boys, an organization that is made up of and run by people of color. I want to get to the heart of what we see with the misrepresentation often that's out there by the Democrats. I want you to understand very clearly, because it can't be done any better than this. Jim Acosta, CNN, accredited. No one has a question about his news media credentials, although I think they should. And he himself said on August 14th of 2017, I'll say it again, August 14th of 2017, he put out the tweet, President Trump condemns the KKK and white supremacists, commenting on Charlottesville. Racism is evil. That's his quote. He said it himself. President Trump is not, you can't call President Trump a racist because he's never condemned the KKK or white supremacy, when Jim Acosta himself is telling the public, or told the public, in 2017 that he actually condemned these groups and white supremacy. This is, again, politicians like Nancy Pelosi, when they're going out there, and what they're doing is they're playing on the idea that, one, the American public has no attention span. Two, that the American public is not informed. And three, that they can play on the emotions of the American public to try and get a political gain. That is all we're seeing here. Nancy Pelosi saying that she wants to impeach the president for doing his constitutional job is trying to assume that people are too dumb and don't remember what's going on. And that's the same thing that we see with Jim Acosta when he says that in 2020, he's trying to say that President Trump has not condemned the KKK and white supremacy, even though he factually knows and has reported in 2017 that he in fact did that very thing. This is the news media working in conjunction with the Democratic Party for a political outcome, and they are assuming people just don't know it. In fact, Joe Biden went even a little bit further, putting out an ad talking about President Trump needing to condemn white supremacists and militia groups. Again, Jim Acosta has already proven he did that since 2017 several times. But Joe Biden, again, is using the fact that Americans don't remember politics going back more than 6 months and is trying to make people believe that President Trump never did this. It is dishonest. It is dishonest in the most deliberate manner, playing on people's emotions, trying to usurp the election. In fact, it's so bad what Joe Biden did that attorney Lynn Wood, who is representing Kyle Rittenhouse, and if you don't remember that, I did some coverage on that. Kyle Rittenhouse was the 17-year-old who had to defend himself from a mob of BLM and Antifa protesters, rioters, to be more accurate, who were rioting in Kenosha. And he had to defend his life against 3 individuals that were trying to kill him. And he wound up in that self-defense killing two of the individuals. One was a child molester, another was a rapist, and a third individual who is a convicted criminal as well wound up getting his arm shot because he had an illegal gun and was threatening Kyle with that. So Linwood, his attorney, defending him on the self-defense Kyle Rittenhouse is used deadly force under self-defense, is coming out and he's suing Joe Biden and the Biden-Harris campaign for libel because Joe put out this message saying falsely that the president has never condemned white supremacists and militia groups, which are not the same thing, and that he also inferred and mislabeled and mischaracterized Kyle Rittenhouse as an individual who is a white supremacist. A message from the news media that has been promoted since the shooting in Kenosha that has never been proven. It was one of the first things said about Kyle Rittenhouse, and to this day, there is no proof of this anywhere in the media that can show any connection between Kyle Rittenhouse and white supremacists. So again, it's the media playing on misconceptions, mischaracterization to try and change people's perceptions to gain a political advantage. And they're getting sued for libel for it, and they should be. Jim Derringer mentions to us from YouTube, feels like the curtain is about to come back on all of this down the line. No telling when exactly, but this has most definitely been constructed by far more than just political parties. I agree. Jim, you're absolutely correct, and thank you for typing in. The fact is, this isn't just a political party. It's one thing for Nancy Pelosi by herself to make an outrageous claim that violates the Constitution of the United States. It's another thing when we suddenly see members of the press factually misrepresenting facts that they themselves have reported on for the advantage of that political party. That's not what the First Amendment's for. That's not what the freedom of the press is supposed to be about. It's not about we like this candidate better than that candidate, so we have to make sure that candidate gets in. That's not what the news media is here for. If I have an opportunity to speak with vice presidential candidate Spike Cohen, it's not because I'm trying to promote Spike Cohen. It's because you, the public, deserve an opportunity to hear his voice and to make a choice on November 3rd when you make your ballots, which I suggest should be done in person. But I'm not here trying to condemn or misrepresent President Trump or Joe Biden, and actually Kamala Harris, who I believe would most likely be the president if the election were to go to the Democrats. I'm not trying to misrepresent them and factually mislead people as Jim Acosta has done because I want someone to win. That is the worst thing. That's called propaganda. That is not news. That is not reporting. That's not even political commentary. That is out and outright lies. And we should call the media out for that. Now, I also want to mention something else because I brought up ballots. So let's talk about ballots. By the way, folks, if someone will let me know, I hear a little bit of a feedback in my system right now. I hope there's no echoes there, but if there is, please let me know. I'll try and tweak the system, but I hear a little echo. So I brought up ballots. November 3rd, there are going to be ballots going out, and I want everyone hearing this, everyone seeing this, please go out and vote. And I will tell you, as I have said always, vote for whomever you believe is the best candidate. If you think Joe Biden is the best candidate, go for it. I don't agree with you, but go for it. If you think Kamala Harris is the best candidate, okay. Just getting some messages that the audio is coming across clearly. Okay, thanks, folks. Just maybe my system here. But go out and vote. If you want to vote for Kamala Harris for president, which is voting for, in my opinion, voting for Joe Biden, then go ahead and do that. If you believe in President Trump, vote for him. And if you believe in the Libertarian candidate, Jo Jorgensen, vote for her. If you don't believe in any of them, vote anyway and write in, I don't know, Mickey Mouse, write in my name, write in your own name. Go out and vote anyway. Your voice is important. If 5% of the nation votes for Mickey Mouse, or they put in my name, or you put in your own name, and these votes are tallied up, and 5%, 10% of the nation is saying, we don't like any of the choices we were given, then that pushes all political parties to get better candidates, to make sure that the candidates that they do have do a better job of representing you and your policies and following the Constitution. Our vote always matters. Don't believe in that lie. Anyone who has told you that your vote does not matter is lying to you. They have a political goal in mind. They want less people to vote so that they can better manipulate that election and they can get more political power. Your vote always matters. Every vote matters. And please make your vote heard. I don't care who you vote for. Just have a reason and go out and vote. And I will tell you, I suggest very strongly you vote in person. It is critical, especially in this year, because we are seeing very clearly evidence that voting any way other than in person is absolutely detrimental, that it is rigged. Now, you'll say, Mike, well, how can you possibly say that? We have evidence. Now, this is from, a lot of people may or may not like this source, but so far, they have been proven to be correct every time they have made any of their breakout news stories. And in particular, Project Veritas on September 27th came out showing that Ilhan Omar is connected to a cash for ballots voter fraud scheme. That's a big statement. That's huge. Let me go over that for you. Okay, and they went into this. Now, again, all links will be connected at the end of the show. You can go and see everything for yourself and read through it clearly. But the part that really jumped out to me is that one of the ballot harvesters described what was going on there. And this is a gentleman named Omar Jamal. And Omar mentions that they come to us, they came to our homes, they said, this year you will vote for Ilhan, as in Ilhan Omar. They said, we will take the absentee ballots, we will fill out the forms for you, and when you get them back, we will fill it out again and send it. In fact, he goes on to mention that when we sign the voting document and they fill it out is when they give us the money. The minute we signed the thing, in other words, the ballot for the election, that's when we get paid. This is part of how Representative Ilhan Omar was elected. This was in her district, the Minnesota 6, as I recall. I believe the Minnesota 6 district. And this is how she got her ballots, at least some of them. I don't know if it was all of them. It doesn't matter if they were all. The fact that any ballots were being paid for, that they were paying people to not even fill out a ballot, just sign on the dotted line and send that document in, that is voter fraud, and that means our elections are not secure. Jim mentions the only downside to being alive. You can only vote once. If you're dead, you get multiple votes. Yes, apparently that is true, because we have seen many times. In fact, there is a radio host who I've met and spoken with before, Kevin McCullough, nationally syndicated, and he has possession, I believe this is from New Jersey, of one of his friends, gave him the voter registration documents and absentee ballot documents for a generic ballot for an individual, his personal friend, who had been dead for 11 years. He reported that a week and a half ago, and I mentioned it in my last show last Sunday. So we see this, and we've seen reports from CBS, from Politico, many organizations telling us how tens of thousands of votes at the least, have been manipulated, that aren't correct. And that is something we're walking into an election with. And that's terrifying. Terrifying. Now, I also decided to take a look, and you can do this yourself. Go to Google, which is manipulated, but even with their algorithms, if you put in ballot harvesting, as I did, and in fact, I'm going to refresh it right here in front of your face, ballot harvesting, and what do we get? Maine court is concerned about it. We know that Nebraska is having problems with it. Michigan is investigating it. Let's stop right there. Utah is beefing up their ballot harvesting ban. That's 4 states. Stop right there. 4 states. If 4 states are concerned about ballot harvesting, that is enough to turn the election. That potentially could make Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Mike Pence, and President Trump, it could change the election in either direction. I'm not picking Democrats or Republicans here, or Libertarians for that matter. I'm telling you right now that if you're not voting in person, there is a very clear and present danger that your vote will be manipulated. And more importantly, if you vote generically, we have seen in, I believe it was in Wisconsin, and I know it was in Pennsylvania, that ballots were just dumped on the side of the road. Valid, confirmed absentee ballots were thrown on the side of the road. So even in generic ballots, I'm absolutely against. There is no security of those. But even absentee ballots that were requested by a voter and verified from that voter, which still can be manipulated, as we see with Ilhan Omar, that were just thrown on the side of the road. I don't care how many votes it is. It could be 1 vote. It could be 100,000. If it happens once in a nation of 330 million people, it can happen many times. Out of 160 million voters, we could see this how many times? If it's even happening 1% of the time, then you're talking about over 1 million votes. That changes an election. That's serious. I see that I got a couple of comments here, and I want to get to that. Jim mentions that also third parties have a concerning amount of influence over our election process as a result of the last 2 decades. It worries me on the future of our system's integrity. Jim, I'm going to address that. Give me 1 second. I want to get through the other comments. You make a good point about something I want to talk about. So give me a second. The Watcher responds, it's likely due to Trump's lackey? And he misspelled President Trump, by the way, but Trump's lackey in Postal Service DeJoy. And that's highly inaccurate and completely wrong. So The Watcher, I'm going to answer you in 1 second. Jim also goes on to comment, I don't trust any major party candidate, hence my concern on third-party supremacy behind the curtain. Jim, I'm going to answer you in 1 second. To The Watcher, by the way, thank you for making your comment. And I thank all, whether you're a Democrat, you're a progressive, you're a socialist, well, maybe not the socialists. If you're a libertarian, a conservative, a Republican, I always welcome everyone's comments. I thank you for telling me whether you agree or not to express yourself, because that's what America's about. That's what the First Amendment is about. It's not about one voice, it's about all of our voices. So I thank you. But to The Watcher, let me explain that I disagree with you. First of all, I don't believe that the Postal Service is under President Trump's beck and call. I disagree with that, and there's no evidence for that. Further, let me mention that the problems with the United States Postal Service, the USPS, have been going on. I'm 52. They have been going on for my lifetime. They have been significant over the last 35 years. How many times has the post office increased its price and said that they have to cut back their service? We've seen that since President Obama being in office, we've seen that the post office has been removing more and more mailboxes and cutting its services because of competition with FedEx, with UPS, and the internet with email. This is a service that is essentially dying, and it costs us more money every year as it dies. The inefficiencies of the U.S. Postal Service, and it is inefficient, does a great job. I don't want to insult postal workers. I think they do a great job. But it is the structure of that, which is government, is flawed because nothing the government does, it does well. Everything the government does, private service, private sector does far, far better, which is why we need a smaller government, not a bigger one. And every time the government is doing something, every year, it costs us more money. Look at how much we spend every year. That is a fact. So our government is inefficient and costs more money every year, even for services that are breaking down. That has nothing to do with President Trump and has been happening far, far longer. Essentially, to the watcher, you're repeating a talking point from Nancy Pelosi and the Democratic Party and Chuck Schumer, and effectively, it's not true. These are problems that were pre-existing, and the post office is not built to carry your secure ballot. They're not. They're not equipped for that. They're not capable of that. And when they do it, even with absentee ballots, we have seen evidence in many states where they are throwing away ballots. That has nothing to do with President Trump. That has to do with the Postal Service and the postal workers and an inefficient system created by the government that is failing the public. So that's pretty straightforward. Yeah, nothing like John Solak mentions, there's nothing like 8 p.m. delivery. But I want to be very clear about that. And I do want to make sure, the watcher, I'm not picking on you, but I'm trying to highlight facts that we know, that are confirmable, that are absolute. I understand that people who don't like President Trump want to say, well, it's his fault. And some things may be his fault. The Postal Service being flawed, inefficient, and ineffective is not the president's fault. I'm not going to blame it on President Obama. I'm not going to blame it on President Trump or President Clinton or President Bush, either Bush. This has been going on for decades. This is a problem of government because government doesn't do anything well. And we do know that if anything, if anyone is manipulating the services, it would be Joe Biden, or rather the U.S. Postal Service Union, the union of the U.S. postal mail carriers, have announced 2 weeks ago that they support Joe Biden. Now, if I happen to be voting for, as an example, Joe Jorgensen, if I'm voting as an example for President Trump, what incentive does that mail carrier have to make sure that my ballot gets properly counted at the Board of Elections if they are supporting and their union is telling them, or they believe, to support Joe Biden? That is an inherent risk of voter fraud. Why do we want to have that risk? Vote in person. Jim mentions, no system runs on the back of a single man. The phrase web of influence is verbatim. And I understand. It is a web of influence. And the web of influence, I think, is far, far larger with the U.S. Postal Service union than it is with President Trump. And I think it's just inaccurate. The watcher mentions, I'm lagging on my end, bad signal, and I do agree our government is inefficient. Okay. I'm sorry, guys. I am seeing that the system is lagging. I apologize about that. I'm not sure why, because nothing has changed on my end. So that looks like, okay. I'm glad the watcher mentions I'm not picking on him, and I'm glad, because that's not my intention. And I apologize that the system is lagging. That is not from me. Nothing, I haven't touched anything in the system. It seems that YouTube, that Facebook do not like that I am talking about this subject, and they're trying to make it difficult for the public to hear about this. Yes, their algorithms pick up stuff as we are live, and yes, I have experienced this before. It's called shadow banning. This is their way of limiting free speech. Suddenly, a signal that was 100% fine suddenly becomes, well, laggy. And therefore, you don't get to have a crystal clear experience that this show started off with and now isn't putting out there. It's not my fault. That's the internet overlords who, by and large, have a very specific viewpoint they want put out there. They don't like when people say something they don't like. That isn't going to stop me. And I'm not sure if Facebook is offline right now or not, because the system is crazy. And again, I can't tell. There's literally nothing I can do on my side about this. This is directly coming from YouTube and Facebook. I think they may have dropped Facebook completely. Jim goes on to say, the media wants you to blame it on a single man because then you ignore the roots of the issues in the system. It's easier for someone to justify their emotional grievance towards an individual. Again, it goes back to emotion, which is a tenet right now of the progressive socialist movement in America. You have to have this emotion. You have to feel like you're right. How often do we hear people, well, I feel like this. I feel offended. I feel like this should be true. That has nothing to do with the truth. Nancy Pelosi felt like she could impeach President Trump several times. There is no factual basis for it found yet, and her latest claim and reasoning for trying to impeach the president is equally unjustified based on the very Constitution she is quoted as trying to say she is supporting. So I just want to make it very clear that I'm trying to let people know, you should vote. I want you to vote, but I think you have to vote in person. The problems that are inherent there is crazy. I don't, for the people who are noticing that there's lag going on right now, it's not your system. It's coming from the internet. And it's not my system. My system is running perfect. I have no load on my system. This is a computer built just for being able to have this conversation. It's not my system. It's not my end. My signal is 100%. It's on the other end. So this is YouTube. This is Facebook trying to silence me without shutting me down. Instead, they just make it almost impossible for you to see this so that they can get away with what they want to say. I apologize. Nothing I can do about that. That's YouTube. That's Facebook. But please persevere. Stick with me. Very often this clears itself up. Wow, it is dropping a lot. Why is it dropping so much? Give me a second, folks. I'm trying to see what's going on here. This isn't coming from my system, folks. It should not be dropping. This is, I hate Facebook. I hate YouTube. I hate when they do this to people, especially when we're live. It is definitely the internet right now. How bad is the lag right now? Can someone respond to me? I know I can see Facebook, I can see YouTube are dropping my signal, and I don't know why. Can anyone tell me how bad is it? I mean, can you hear? Okay, we should be coming right back up. All right, everyone, I should be right back up. Okay, I believe the system is back up and that it's working properly again. I don't know what's going on. Again, this is on the side of Facebook and YouTube, and I apologize. If you're just joining us, folks, what just happened is we were doing our live stream. The signal was 100%, did not change on my end, and then on the end of Facebook and YouTube, the system started crashing. Rather than having it interrupt and make it impossible for us to hear each other, I instead went with stopping the system and then bringing it back up. So the system should be back up now. We should be able to hear each other clearly again. My signal seems to be going out clean now. And so for those who are not here, this is, again, No Soundbites Allowed. I am your host, Michael Voss. The first half of the show that we've been doing, we were talking about the potential of the Supreme Court nominee of Pelosi impeaching President Trump for that and why that is not possible. We went into Pelosi trying to impeach President Trump, why that isn't possible according to the Constitution. We talked a little bit about the fact that President Trump, in fact, according to the very news media that is attacking him today, in fact, did denounce and has denounced racism and the KKK since 2017, as it's been proven. We went into the fact that Joe Biden is continuing to put out that false message as if it were true to manipulate people emotionally, and he is getting sued as a result of that. We talked a little bit about the ballots themselves and how it is imperative for you to vote in person, if at all possible, because we have seen the exposure of ballot schemes like that being used by Ilhan Omar to be able to basically pay for ballots. She's buying votes, and that this is a problem happening in 4 different states at this moment. So hopefully that brings everyone up and you can see the first part of the show and see that, and I apologize for any lags that had existed then. I want to pick back up now, folks, because I see there was a comment that came from Jim on YouTube, and I wanted to answer him a little bit because he was speaking about his concern about third parties. And he's speaking about, and I think the comment was, there it is. Third parties have a concerning amount of influence over our election process as a result of the last 2 decades. It worries me on the future of our system's integrity. So I want to address that because that's an important question. Okay, and I see some people are switching to YouTube instead of Facebook. Thank you. And that should be coming out better. So the system we have right now, our election system, is built so that you could have literally 15 parties, theoretically, and it would still work. That's part of the reason why we have an electoral Congress, electoral college, instead of a majority vote. Because regardless of how many groups there are, the system will continue to work and everyone will be able to have some representation, whether you're in Rhode Island or whether you're in Wisconsin or you happen to be in LA or New York City. Because without that system, then your voice will not be heard, and the only voice that would be heard is LA, New York City, Chicago, and that would be pretty much it. And literally you could go to 5 cities throughout the nation. There would also be Dallas and Miami. And once you have those 5 cities, you don't need to talk to another person in the entire country. Because if you can get the majority of those cities to vote for you, that's it. If it's a popular vote, that's all you need to win an election, which is the worst thing that could possibly happen. But the fact that there is another party out there doesn't take away from the electoral system. It doesn't take away from your vote. I don't believe so. Now, traditionally, we've seen that whether it's the Green Party, which is also the Communist Party of the United States, they use the term green because it sounds a lot better than communist, because if they said they were actual communists, Howie Hawkins, then they'd get no votes whatsoever. And I've interviewed Howie Hawkins before. I am strongly, absolutely sure that I am not misrepresenting his position. Howie Hawkins is a communist. From my understanding in my discussion and interview with him, which I did a year ago. If I'm wrong, Howie Hawkins, members of the Green Party, please contact me and we'll have that discussion. I'll even do an interview with you to make sure I get it correct. We also have the Libertarian Party. And between those two, those are pretty much the biggest ones. When you see them out there, they normally get somewhere between 0.5% to 2.5% of the vote. Normally, that's not enough to change an election. The majority of elections do not get changed because we're not seeing a president elected or not elected because of the libertarian or communist vote. Now, if they ever get up to 5, 10, 15%, that's somewhat of an argument. But also, if 5, 10, 15% of the nation is voting for a third party, then that means that the 2 major mainstream parties have completely failed the people, and therefore we should have a third party. And it's happened before. We had the Whig Party. We have the Federalist Party. We have what's become the Democratic and Republican parties. Over time, we have seen parties change. The system hasn't always been just a two-party system. We're told that because in the modern era, those are the two parties with all the power, but it hasn't always been just a two-party system. And those parties haven't always been Democrats and Republicans, although they have become them. What their origins were turned into what we now know as Democrats and Republicans, but they weren't always Republicans and Democrats, and they weren't always the only ones. So it's good to have other parties because our nation changes over time. And I think it makes the Republicans, the Democrats, I think it makes everyone better by having more choices. And this is why I also say, even if you hate everybody on the ballot, you don't like Joe Jorgensen, you don't like Donald Trump, you don't like Joe Biden or Kamala Harris because that's who's really running, then vote in your own name. Vote in my name. Vote in Mickey Mouse or Donald Duck. Actually, Mickey Mouse gets a huge percentage. It gets about 2% of the vote every year in presidential years. It's a huge number. And that's because people don't agree. And our parties cannot improve and have no reason, no motivation to improve unless we're telling them, we're not going to vote for you anymore. That you're not doing your job and you don't get my vote and you don't get my money. And I will vote for someone else instead of you. And if you happen to be voting for blank or Mickey Mouse or my name or whoever, guess what? They're going to suddenly go, oh my God, that's not even real. I have to do better. And I know the answer to that, of course, is, or the counter argument is, what about Ross Perot? Ross Perot is one of the biggest calls to say, we need to go in a new direction. We need to pay attention to things that people are talking about, like lowering taxes for businesses and individuals. And when we did that, finally, from the time of Ross Perot until Donald Trump, not a single Democrat or Republican lowered the taxes. Didn't happen. Everyone promised they would. Everyone paid attention to the fact that Ross Perot highlighted, and this is one of the issues he highlighted, and took into account, said, hey, the public cares about this. This would make a difference in the economy. Neither one of the two major parties actually had the balls to go forward with it. And it took Donald Trump to step in as somewhat of an outsider, even among the Republican Party, actually very much an outsider from the mainstream Republican Party. And he helped to get that through. And that's why we have a better economy. And if you think this is a bad economy, imagine if tax rates were higher and businesses were making less money and they got shut down just like COVID did, just like we have heard Anthony Brindisi and we have heard Joe Biden say they plan to increase taxes, your taxes, you, the regular person in America, your taxes are going to go up. The taxes for the businesses you work at are going to go higher. That means things are going to cost more money and more businesses are going to have less leeway. And when they have businesses shut down like they are right now, you're going to see more businesses close. Because if you see, 12% of businesses across the nation, about 1 in 6 have closed because of COVID, because they didn't make enough money. Imagine if you had higher taxes, which means the burden to be able to make enough money to stay alive was even higher. Do you think there would be more businesses open or shut down right now? It's something that's not talked about a lot, but it makes complete sense. This is simple math. If you raise the bar on what it takes to break even for a business, and then you take away 25, 30, 50% of that business's clientele, and therefore its revenues, how much harder is it for a business to break even? How many fewer businesses will actually make that bar? That is what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have promised you. That is what Nancy Pelosi and Anthony Brindisi he happens to be my local congressman, have promised you that they're going to increase those rates. And at the same time, they are insisting that you have to shut down businesses again because COVID round 2 is back. And they, in the entire time since February, they have not bothered to come up with an actual plan to address the second round of COVID. Mind you, I don't think President Trump has a great plan for it either, but he does have a plan, and that plan is, I'm going to get vaccines out as soon as possible. It's a plan. Is it the best plan? No. What's the alternative coming from Democrats? Shut down your businesses, hide in your house. You are now a prisoner in your own home under solitary confinement, and your businesses are going to all shut down because we're going to increase your taxes. That is stupid. That makes no sense whatsoever. And for anyone who may be saying to me, well, Mike, that's not really what they're saying. In the southern tier of New York, in the city of Binghamton right now, Broome County right now, County Executive Jason Garnar came out with an announcement on Thursday saying that people need to stay in their homes. Do not go out to businesses. Do not go out and have food. Do not buy things. Stay in your home as a prisoner in your home for the next 7 days because the number of cases went up, not the number of deaths. The number of cases went higher. And because that number of cases went higher, he's saying isolate yourself in your home so that, and businesses that are relying on this business after being shut down for almost half the year, actually some of them more than half the year, they have to flounder on no revenues and still pay for their employees somehow. And then he's counting on the revenues of these businesses that are now going to have reduced, or if everyone listened to him, no sales whatsoever. He wants to then spend as much money as in a year to 2019 when we actually have business revenues and pay for all the services that the people expect, that he has promised. Does that make sense to anyone? I know, and I agree. I don't recommend people to stand. If you happen to be in the high-risk group, which means you're 70 and above, especially with pre-existing conditions, or you are a person with a compromised immune system, yes, I can understand. Stay home. Wear masks, stay home, isolate from people as much as possible because you are the group most at risk. You should be home. You should be isolating yourself for your own protection. If you happen to be in a group that is not in that severe risk group, which means basically anyone under the age of 60, especially if you get younger and younger, if you happen to be 20 or below, it's really meaningless for you. But if you happen to be under 60 and you do not have any pre-existing conditions, like you've had lung cancer, chemotherapy, diabetes, any of those kind of things, if you don't have AIDS, then you should be pretty much fine. Social distance, go out there and live your life. And guess what? If you do that and go to work and go to businesses and buy food and buy various things that we all need, the economy continues to stay open and those businesses will stay open and people will continue to be employed. And then the county will get money so that it can actually pay for this. By the way, it's very important. This is the same county executive who demanded and actually put out an unofficial official statement for people to lock themselves in their homes every other day at the height of COVID for no reason other than he told people to do it. He assumed that power. That's insane. He's also the person who told our community in July 22nd that the county was bankrupt, and yet today we continue to have operations going forward with no answer on why there's a difference. So government is very confused, especially in New York State at this moment. Nobody knows what's really going on. We got a couple of comments here. So Jason from Ming says, I think he's bowing down to Cuomo because of the threats to fine people, which is illegal. And I can't wait for the lawsuit for someone to sue him on that. You cannot punish me for exercising my right, the 10th Amendment. all powers that are not expressly detailed by the government are held by the people, all of them. You have all the rights. The government only has the right to do certain things, and the government cannot compel you to medicate yourself or to take health positions that you don't want to, especially when there is no true threat to the public. Yes, 200,000 people have died, and that is sad, without question. There are 330 million people in America. Over 2 million people a year die in America every year. We have the same number of people who died in America as all of Europe, which is the same number of people, 360 million people, versus the 330 million people in America. It's the same numbers. The actual mortality rate is approximately I believe it's 0.8%, and I know for my region in New York, it is 0.04%. 0.04. This is not the bubonic plague. It is not, you want to talk a pandemic? A pandemic would be 5% of the nation dying. It's nowhere near that. People are doing pretty well. This is a severe flu. You may not like that. You may not want to feel like you agree with me, but the numbers tell you it is true. And it is not, we have more people. As I began the show earlier today, and I'm going to get to the comments that came up, but I began the show today. There's a reason why every episode I've been putting out has had the suicide hotline and the domestic abuse hotline. Since March, we have had a near astronomical, virtually exponential increase in the number of suicides, domestic abuse, drug abuse that have been going on because of COVID-19. We have had more people die because of suicides, domestic abuse, and drug abuse that combined than everyone who has died from COVID-19. We are hurting more people with this supposed solution than we are by leaving people alone. It's a reality. And it may not sound nice, but it's true. So we protect the people who are at risk, but let's not destroy the nation in doing that. I don't know. So Mavis mentions Sweden's model seems to work fine. They aren't having a second wave because they got herd immunity, which is true. And I expect that they will get somewhat of a second wave because just like the flu, some people will always get affected. That's always true. We cannot, even if you have a cure, and we get people, there is no such thing as a cure. What you see is that you get your inoculations. And whether it's the flu or anything, you're going to see there are some people who are always going to get it. This is no different. There's no evidence medically anywhere in the world to say that that is not true. Unless it suddenly mutates, which it has not, there is no difference. That is a scientific fact. I don't care what people's feelings are about it. That is a fact. I don't care how Andrew Cuomo feels today and tomorrow he changes his rules. That is a fact. That's it. Love to TVL. Love to TVL. I'm not sure what that means. Okay. Or what it's short for. Mentions, yep, you only quarantine if you are sick or high risk or afraid. Everyone else should live their lives if that's their choice. Fear-mongering has been huge. Huge. Because the same media that does what we saw, as I mentioned earlier, the same media, like Jim Acosta, CNN, that has been telling everyone, oh, President Trump he's never condemned white supremacy, even though they reported that, is the same media that's telling you, you're going to die. You're going to die if you actually have COVID. Don't go outside, otherwise it will kill you. Even though less than 1% of the nation is actually being affected. The media is playing on fears. They are lying to the public for a political gain. And I hate that, it's just, sorry, that's the truth. That's the honesty of it. And I'm not saying people can't be protected. I'm not saying that we can't make choices, but I am saying you are being deceived. And we should be honest with each other about it. And there goes Facebook. There goes YouTube. All of a sudden, I've got a lag back again because I said something that's true. And their filters are going off trying to shut me down just so I'd hit my system. But I'm going to keep going. Love to continues. I always hear you wear masks to protect others, not yourself. So if a mask will hold in the germs so you don't spread them to others, why wouldn't it block out germs from others? Actually, if masks were effective at all, which they are not, then literally, if half the people are wearing the mask, the other half the people should be safe or relatively safe. But the fact is, no one's walking around with surgical grade masks. You're not. If you can wash your mask, it's not a mask. If you are looking at, if you can blow smoke through that mask, it's not a mask. If it's not good enough to have surgery, it's not a mask. Therefore, germs are going back and forth through it. That means it is completely cosmetic. It serves no purpose. And if you do not believe me, go to the CDC, ask them. Go to a medical doctor, ask them. The fact is, if your mask can allow smoke, or if you can wash it, it's not preventing germs from going from one person to another. Therefore, it is completely useless. Again, science is science. It's all about what looks like science so that you feel better. Again, it goes back to feelings. And that's Governor Cuomo. Yes, the masks make no sense in the way they are being done because it's not about safety. It's about impressions. It's about power. Oh, hey, Tina. Okay. I didn't know that was your alternate name. Okay, cool. Oh, that's right. It's on Facebook. Actually, on YouTube. Jason mentions masks have no universal standards at this point, and they should, unless their purpose is for virtual signaling. It is for signaling. It is about what it looks like and not what it is. And that's why masks are completely useless. Because if they weren't, we'd be all having surgical masks, and it would have an entirely different impact. That is the reality of it all. That being said, let me also continue. And I thank everyone for the input and the conversation and putting up with Facebook and YouTube as they try to shadow ban me and silence me from being able to have a conversation with you. And we did lose a few people, but I'm going to keep going. I wanted to mention something interesting here because it's not just Nancy Pelosi who is trying to impeach the president and to take advantage of the public. Because Devin Nunes is ripping into Adam Schiff, and he did so just 2 days ago at the House of Representatives in one of the congressional meetings because he mentions that this is another Trump impeachment committee, that Adam Schiff is at it again. The same man, Adam Schiff, who is, no, I can't show it. There it is. See that guy right here? Adam Schiff. Adam Schiff was the same man who absolutely promised the American people on national TV that he had absolute evidence of Russian collusion that would condemn President Trump and put him in jail as well as have him impeached. That evidence does not exist. It has never existed. Adam Schiff has never explained why he made such a statement and what is the proof that he said he had in his hands that the American people have never, ever seen, does not exist. No investigation, 5 investigations, none of them have found this evidence that Adam Schiff guaranteed the public that he had. How this man is still in elected office, I do not understand when he lies to the American people to your face. And he is now, according to Representative Devin Nunes, doing it again in the House Intelligence Committee. And I did have an opportunity to cover Representative Nunes when he was in the Southern Tier of New York. And that's, you can look that up if you want. So Schiff is again violating rules and trying to make up a story so that in this election, he can say there is an investigation against President Trump so that will shift some votes, even though there is absolutely no evidence for that. And guess what? The major media is not talking about it because they don't want you to know that that this member, Adam Schiff, is being called out by Devin Nunes because he has, according to Devin Nunes, sick fantasies. Adam Schiff has sick fantasies about having a Trump impeachment, just like Nancy Pelosi when she says that she wants to impeach President Trump for doing what the Constitution tells him to do. We are in a crazy place in the world. Crazy. And there goes Facebook and YouTube again, trying to block me out again, lagging the system again, because I'm saying something they don't want you to hear. There is no greater proof for me that I have perfect signal and I am talking with you folks, and everything in my system is exactly the same. I haven't touched anything, and my system is putting out the signal exactly the same. And now we have YouTube and Facebook trying to lag it, to throw you away, to get you away from hearing the truth with documentation that I have presented, which will be in the description. Okay, I got about 5 more minutes, folks, because I have to go, and I'm going to be covering vice presidential candidate Spike Cohen, who is in Binghamton, New York, and he's going to be speaking. I want to cover that, so I'm not going to get to everything else I wanted to talk about. Let me see here real quick. I did want to mention that it's very funny that the Rochester mayor, who got rid of her police chief because of BLM, is now the very same person who is under investigation. Where do I have it? Nope, that is the article. Nope. Oh, there it is. There it is. She is under investigation right now for fraud. Felony campaign finance fraud. The very same woman who says, oh, our police chief isn't doing his job and he has to be removed instantly right now. She got rid of him immediately because he didn't do his job. And here she is with not one, but a couple of charges on first-degree scheme to defraud. You know, an election law offense. It's crazy. And yet she wants to say, this is Mayor Lovey Warren. She got rid of her police chief because he was just not doing his job for the public. Well, you've committed fraud against the constituents in Rochester. Why aren't you just removing yourself? Resign. If you believe in what you're saying so much. Because she doesn't. Because she doesn't. Let me also get into the fact that, and please, if you haven't seen it yet, you can look this up. We covered a story earlier, just 2 days ago, something else that you're not being told. Binghamton University is under investigation right now. They're under investigation because, according to the Department of Education, who is investigating Binghamton University, they have misrepresented the ability of students and parents, free speech, the ability of students to conduct conversations with themselves and other students, that they have made false, erroneous, and or misleading violations of 20 USC 1094 and a few other articles. It is the federal government investigating Binghamton University. There is a news media blackout on this. Please see the video I have, which documents from October of 2019 until February of 2020, every single item that has been going on, showing that Binghamton University is actively suppressing the First Amendment, the rights of students and individuals, and they're now going to be punished, probably by the New York State Assembly if they ever get power back from Governor Cuomo. But absolutely, it looks like the federal government is going to be imposing fines and or potentially a loss of accreditation to Binghamton University, and that will absolutely impact the local community. And if this happens, as I expect, then you are going to see that in colleges in Rochester, Albany. You're going to see it in LA. You're going to see this throughout the entire nation, where colleges are going to be penalized for attacking conservatives, as we have seen at Berkeley, across the state, across the nation. Now, let me also mention, I see that Trump COVID, what will happen now? I'm going to answer that in 1 second. And did you notice, Roderick, I see a comment, did I notice Roderick's Facebook page? So I believe you mean Roderick Douglas, which is the alias, allegedly, for Messiah Andrews, who is one of the leaders of Plot in the southern tier of New York, who has been arrested several times for, he was arrested for rioting, he was arrested for disturbing the peace, basically being a very good Plot member and being violent and disruptive to the public. And so that individual had a Facebook page, the Roderick Douglas page. I'm not aware of it being missing. If anything, I doubt if I'm not aware of Facebook removing any of the pages of any member of Plot or BLM, no matter how violent or racist it may be. And I have proof of Roderick Douglas on Facebook making threats to me and insulting, using racial slurs against me that Facebook didn't care about. So I don't think it was there. I think that Roderick Douglas, or allegedly also known as Messiah Andrews, I think he's, if anything, shut it down because he's getting too much attention. And it's negative for his organization, Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, which is looking to overthrow the government and defund the police. And as for Trump COVID, I think President Trump, it's been reported most recently, a couple hours ago, President Trump is recovering. According to CBS News, so again, not the left here, this is CBS News, this is the left reporting this, that President Trump looks to be continuing to improve. He should be leaving Walter Reed National Military Center on Monday, and he is expected to go back to work. So I believe that the president is doing fine, like 99% of the rest of the country. In fact, for those who are over 70, it's 94%, and the president is doing fine. And I think he'll be at the next presidential debate equally as well as he was in the last one. So I don't think that changes anything. In fact, I think it will encourage people to be able to go out and live their lives, because COVID isn't a death sentence. I know a lot of young people who've got it and have had it in the past, who have it right now, and our president has it right now, and not one of them is expected to not survive. I think they're all going to do fine. It is a sad shame when anyone does pass away. There are people who have pre-existing conditions. There are exceptions to every rule, but the overwhelming majority, 99% of people, will be okay. And I think that comes that with Trump doing that and making the next debate, which is on the 15th, I believe that you will see that be a very big positive for him. You saw just the announcement that he had COVID dropped the stock market 500 points. I think you're going to see that improve the stock market, and I think it's going to move his ratings even higher going into the next debate. I still think, though, the bigger issue is the Supreme Court. And I think that Amy Barrett is the reason why we're going to see a discrepancy there. We're going to see that that's taking away, because there's this false impression that somehow if Amy Barrett is appointed as a Supreme Court justice, which will most likely happen, that somehow the Second Amendment, the abortion will suddenly disappear, which is a lie. It is a lie. At the very worst that could possibly happen, which is unlikely, is that abortion will go back to the states, not the federal government. Planned Parenthood, that makes a profit every year, will no longer get money from the federal government. Taxpayers will no longer be forced to give money to Planned Parenthood to perform abortions. But it is a private institution. It makes its own money. They make a profit every year off of doing abortions. And so that's the two things that will happen. You will no longer pay taxes. I know, because I'm talking about abortion. You will no longer pay Planned Parenthood your taxes to be able to commit abortions. They will have to survive on their profits, which they make a profit off of selling baby parts, which has been confirmed and is true, and they will make money off of committing abortions. And the other thing is that, and this is the worst case scenario, and you will see the question of abortion go to each and every one of the states, and each state will be able to decide. And that's it. All right, folks. This is the second time the system is trying to crash on me. I have to go, and I'm going to be, I hope to be coming back to you a little bit later today with a live interview with Spike Cohen. I am going to his event right now, and I will get live coverage of that. So I thank you for putting up with Facebook